Well, welcome to the Triple F podcast. I'm Jim Hochberg. We're supposed to talk about something I'm supposed to introduce, but I found out a minute ago that Eva's going to throw some stuff in at the beginning, so let's see what happens.
Hello, Jim Hochberg.
Hey, so throw it in.
I want to
throw
show
it
you,
in.
Jim. I want to show. So I'm Eva Andrade. I got scoldings for people that said, "Eva, we know who you are," but there's new people that are gonna be like, "Who is this person?" So
Who is this person? That's what I want to know.
I am the co-host of the show with Jim Hochberg, and we're going to be talking about the things that have happened to parents and their being labeled.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Labeled by the DOJ as being terrorists. But so when I was doing research for this, Jim, I went to YouTube and I typed in, parental terroristic threats just to see what came up. And I want to show you what came up. So what's going to pop up on the screen. And for those of you that are watching, you're going to find this very amusing. So this came up. So that's what I put in. Department of Justice investigating parents. And look what's in the blue box, Jim. Read that out loud.
So it says independent fact check. Who's that? I never heard of
Well, I'll show you in a minute. But they have
PolitiFact,
yes.
2 months ago.
Right. Okay.
FBI, DOJ tagged threats against school officials, not parents, for attending school board meetings. The claim, parents that go to school board meetings and question the curriculum are being flagged by the Department of Justice and the FBI for attending the meeting is false.
Right. So now when you click on that, Jim, watch what they're referencing. Okay. So they're political. So go ahead to the next screenshot.
Parents that go to school board meetings and question the curriculum are being flagged by the Department of Justice and the FBI for attending the meeting.
And look what they said. So they stamped a big false on it, and then finally the last.
But it's not true.
Well,
it is false because they're misstating the fact.
Watch what PolitiFact says, right? So
Who's Scott Perry?
He was just some commentator that he said this back in January, on January 8th. He said, okay, so the next one, so this is PolitiFact's ruling on that statement, right?
The Poynter Institute, never heard of them.
Oh, yeah, so.
Perry said parents that go to school board meetings and question the curriculum are being flagged by the Department of Justice and the FBI for attending the meeting. Perry's office provided no evidence, and his claim echoes misleading statements about a 2021 Justice Department memo directing federal law enforcement to hold meetings nationwide about criminal threats against school officials. The memo focused on monitoring criminal conduct. It wasn't about investigating parents who spoke about curriculum at the school board meetings. The FBI created an EduOfficial threat tag as a logistical tool to track threats of violence against school officials, not to flag parents for attending meetings. Well, I think that's correct, but that's not what happened.
Well, exactly. And I know that as you were preparing for today's meeting, I thought that what you'd find amusing about this is we've got PolitiFact.
Well, I wouldn't have clicked on their link. I would have found somebody more honest.
Well, no, but this is what people are facing now when they're doing their own research, right? They have these boxes that come up that say, fact check, like with the COVID, right? That's what happened. People would post something and then suddenly something would come up and say, we want to give you the real information. It happened on our show about abortion. Every time we talk about abortion on YouTube, they will put up their fact check on the issue. So
can we complain?
Well, you could, but they'll boot us off.
Oh.
So let's do this because you and I talked about this 2 shows already, which thanks for Jim hunted that for us because we did it over a year ago, and so you found the links and they're located below for those of you watching on YouTube. Make sure you click the link if you want to get the big picture. But just as a memory, stroke people's memory a little bit about what's happening.
So. Different from what I was intending to talk about. So I got to think a minute here. So in 2021, actually, it was way more than a year ago.
But our show was a year ago.
Our show was in October of 2021. So it's like more than a year and a half ago. It was show number 002 on October 28th, 2021. And we did a show. We were at the the space. What was that place in Mapunapuna where
Oh,
we did
yeah.
the show?
Yeah.
Anyway, so near the end of the show, after talking about the National Association of School Boards getting the President of the United States, Joe Biden, and the DOJ, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, to consider parents that are upset in school boards and angry over stuff as domestic terrorists. So near the end of that show number 2 on YouTube, I actually said on the show that Congress needs to have hearings on this to figure out why the FBI wanted to treat parents as domestic terrorists at school board meetings, because they're objecting to stuff. And they were objecting to CRT curriculum stuff, but more than that, they were actually objecting to COVID requirements.
The mask mandates.
The thing in Loudoun County, the dad who was upset because the school board was denying that his daughter was raped by a transgender guy in the school bathroom, but it was his daughter and he knew it was true. So what I was going to talk about today was we asked on October 28, 2021 for Congress to do an investigation to figure out why the FBI and the executive branch were wanting to call parents domestic terrorists. And the reason I wanted to talk about it from that perspective is because on March 21st, 2023, Congress issued an interim report on that very investigation that they did, which is kind of interesting. And my focus, because I think, as you know, what's very, 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 very important to the freedom that we think we're going to continue living in this country is that we put people in elected office who will represent our values. In October of 2021, the people that were in control of the Congress were not having these hearings. And the hearings didn't start until the election in 2022, when the Republicans had the majority in Congress and could run the show. It's really important that we elect people that are going to take care of us when the government's doing this weird stuff, like calling us domestic terrorists. So that was one huge point that I was intending to start with, because, as you know, voting is something that I always like to talk about every chance I get, right?
Right.
So the weird thing is, back in 21, this story unfolded slowly. And we actually ended up doing show number 2, and then later on we did show number 11 when we found out things we didn't know at the beginning. All we knew at the beginning was the National Association of School Boards sent a letter to the president asking that they're concerned for all their school board members because they were being threatened at school board meetings by parents.
And people in Hawaii will remember that at that time, too, there were several stories that appeared in the paper about that sort of stuff happening right here in Hawaii.
And so
it was a conversation that was being had.
And so a couple of days after the letter went to President Biden, Merrick Garland issued an order to the FBI to start investigating parents as domestic terrorists.
And this report that you're referring to, the link is available for those watching on YouTube. Check the link so you can read the report. As Jim and I always say, go back to the source. You know, you can read newspaper articles that talk about the source, but what you really need to do is be checking the source out for yourself, because in today's world, you're going to get the spin of whatever paper you're listening to, whatever news source you're picking up. So read it for yourself. But in the report, when you read it, it's really interesting because.
But I don't want to get to the report yet.
Okay.
We're still working our way through the story.
All right.
Because
you go.
If you don't click the links and rewatch the old show, they at least should have the milestone.
Right. Yes. True.
So I would suggest that you watch the old shows. All we knew was the School Board Association asked the president, who told the attorney general, who told all the federal law enforcement people across the country to go look at these parents and, treat them badly. Later, we learned that the School Board Association, the National Association, never wanted a letter like that. There were two people in executive positions in the office of the National Association that worked with the staff of the White House to craft the letter to the president.
And did we not hear during the election that this was going to be the most transparent presidency in history?
Yes. So as the thing unfolded through show number 11, we came back with, this is bizarre. It's like when you have a preteen kid that cannot ever admit they do something wrong and they lie about stuff. It's like...
And that right there ties into so many issues we're facing today. I mean, you've got some people that believe that people 14, 13, 16 can make decisions on their own, but everybody tends to agree that brains are not fully developed at that time and kids can say and believe in anything. So if trust me, I don't know about you, but if I went back on what I said about myself as a teenager, no, I'm not. In fact, I won't even go there. My dad, who's listening to this, is laughing because he can tell you all the things that I said I would be, back then. So.
Well, he won't always remember all the old things, so you will get some solace later.
He's Portuguese. He's going to remember it until the Lord brings him home.
So as time went by, FBI and Department of Justice employees became whistleblowers to the congressmen that wanted to figure out what was going on, because the FBI has remember we talked about what is terroristic threatening. It's a state crime. Right. It has particular things, and it's different in different states. In Hawaii, it requires imminent threats. And we had, you got to watch the shows because.
And on my notes, Jim, I'll show it to you later. There's actually in red, Jim said this, Jim said this, Jim said this, because you made it really clear what the difference was and why they didn't need to go in
it's
the
not
route
a federal.
that they
It's not federal jurisdiction.
Right.
That's the thing. And so whistleblowers were from the Department of Justice were, sharing with certain congressmen the political issues. And so after the 2022 election, when the Republicans took over control of the House of Representatives in Congress, they put together these committees to do these investigations of, the January 6th thing they're going to do over because it was so one-sided and not true and, blah, blah, blah. They have the committee on the weaponization of the federal government against the people. That's part of what this investigation is. And the Judiciary Committee's doing other investigations and all that stuff. So this is just an interim report. So to close off the introductory part of our discussion, I guess there's going to be another show because there's going to be the not interim report. I guess it's going to be like a final report.
And it's really interesting because even some of the conservative groups like Heritage actually had some negative things to say about this committee hearing, but not necessarily attacks on any individuals. But looking back at all of these congressional hearings that we've had forever, I mean, in our country, when things happen, there are congressional hearings. Like the Heritage really felt like there wasn't enough money put into this particular investigation. Something this big and this deep should have had more money assigned to it. But hey, they got to start somewhere, right? And maybe that's why it's just an interim report because they've got a lot of work to do.
Maybe that's why the Biden administration wants to spend all this money, so there's no money for investigation.
I do have, and I know that you've got a lot of thoughts about the report. I did read it. I have a lot of notes on here. I will say my one negative comment about this report is they did in this report what I don't like, and I think you've mentioned in the past before you don't like either. They generalize many times.
Way too much. I thought so too. It looks like the January 6th report,
right?
In that sense,
yeah. So like when they make comments like numerous AGs or like,
and then they give you 3 examples.
Yeah, because it's like this is what I want to know. There are 50 AGs in this great country. I want to know 3 of them replied.
You mean state
20,
AGs.
yes. Yeah. So when they're talking about the state AGs, right? Well, when they talk about the state AGs, right, they go many of them. It's like, even if they say the majority of them, Don't tell me majority. Tell me, and you know what? I want to know. And maybe they're in the footnotes. I didn't see it there, but maybe
Or
you have to
maybe it's
click.
going to be in the
Maybe it'll
final.
be in there. But I want to know which states, because I guarantee you
They're
the
red
state
states.
of Hawaii is not going
Correct.
to be one of them.
And that's why I liken it to the January 6th report. It is the Republican version of events. And if they were going to write a report that wasn't political, I think there's a lot of politics in it. They would say, we've all seen videos of parents screaming, but that's not terroristic threatening. That's just screaming in a microphone from 50 feet away.
And Jim, here, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm just too much of a Pollyanna on this, but you explained it really well in the show. So go back and watch it if you haven't. I want to hear that kind of stuff from the AG.
Yes.
The AG should be the one explaining. And you know what? Maybe that would help back up whatever decisions they make, right? So if he was to say, this is how we define, as a federal organization or department, this is how we define terroristic threatening. And this is why this, but I am so tired. Like I don't know if you did, but I watched some of the hearing on this particular thing. And
I saw parts of it.
I hate, and I don't care whether somebody is a Republican or a Democrat. I don't waste my time arguing with somebody on the other side just because they wear the other hat.
Well, they're doing that for video for their election.
Stop.
I mean,
do your
it's
job.
politics.
Do your job. We elected you to do a job. I get that you're a Democrat or that you're a Republican and you may not like people on the other side. I get it. Don't waste my time arguing about that point. I'm so sick of it. And you know what? Both sides are guilty of it. And I think all of us just want people elected to do their job. That's why we elect them, right? You would hope.
That's why we're supposed to. I don't think we do.
Well, and I,
we don't.
So you guys stay tuned, because in about 2 shows, Jim and I are going to be talking about the power that goes back to the people. We've talked about it before, but we're going to hammer it home, because you know what? It's time we start paying attention to the car. The car.
That was and show number 2 is the first time I thought of it.
I'm telling you, so it's like, stay tuned, because next week we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court recently punted on a case. Well, that's how some people are looking at it. They punted on a case in regards to abortion. So we're going to talk about that. But after that, you and I are going to talk about the power to the people. So let's
talk a little bit about the report, because
yes,
I am very glad that the Congress did this investigation, because I kind of assumed or expected that they came up with this domestic terrorism not because they were actually worried about school boards and teachers and principals being hurt physically, but because of the election cycle. And that's what this report says, is that it was a manufactured issue because COVID had revealed what was going on in the schools, and parents did not like it. And when parents are worried about their kids, that's something they vote about.
Yep. So to make sure that people see that we're not just putting our own thoughts into this, the report actually says, quote, "It appears from these documents and the information received previously that the administration's actions were a political offensive meant to quell swelling discord over controversial education curricula and unpopular school board decisions." And it goes on to say, this came out just weeks before a pivotal gubernatorial election in Virginia. So they're saying that the timing was definitely suspect.
Right. And I sort of guessed that that's what it was without having any of the information that they were able as congressmen in a hearing to subpoena the documents, the emails. And you really should click on the link and read the interim report, because they talk about emails between this guy and this guy talking about this and that thing, and it's like heavy on the facts. But in the text, they do generalize. About the importance and the meaning of what those things are. The fact that they find 27 or 25 communications in writing across the entire country is 25. That's one person, half the state. I mean, it's not a lot.
And if we believe what they're claiming in this report, and that's that, there was a lot of pushback. They didn't get documents right away. When they did get documents, there was so much information redacted that they kind of, in those kind of cases, I mean, as an attorney, if you're given a redacted document, you kind of have to make some kind of speculation because certain key things that might change your mind is redacted. And
when it's in a legal proceeding, I can have access to a judge to make sure it should be redacted.
So let me ask this,
which is different
because people may not know this. When Congress is having a hearing, are they seeing when we're told that they have redacted information? Is that because the information they're looking at is redacted, or that it's redacted when they're providing it to the public? Like, do they see it redacted or not?
And this is a guess. I don't know. I think the agency that gives the document does the redacting. So
that means Congress, when
they get the paper, it's blacked out.
Right. So again, they do.
Think.
So if that's correct, then that means they are speculating on some things. If certain things have been crossed off, that could change their mind.
Well, if a paragraph is blacked over, so they have no idea what's said, I would not accept that.
Okay.
If they're covering up a name or an address, personal identifying information, because it's going to be released to the public for, identity theft stuff, that I could accept, but not this other stuff.
Well, yeah. If I clicked on some of the links to look at some of that stuff, and there are pages that are almost entirely blacked out. So it's like, how do you get the full context?
Well, see, that's the interesting thing. They do have whistleblowers who may be explaining what's covered up. So they may have some of the information.
Yeah. But now the reason that I started with those clips that you say don't really fit, they actually do fit, because this report, and this is why I found it. So in the report, they talk about, and this is again a quote, the Justice Department subjected moms and dads to the opening of an FBI investigation about them, the establishment of an FBI case file that includes their political views, and the application of a threat tag. And that's exactly what that guy said in that original post. So for them to come back and say, that's false, and here's why it's false. And again, I'm still looking at bits and pieces myself,
but what that guy was focused on is the idea that was never stated anywhere that I ever heard, which was just solely for attending the meeting, you were a domestic terrorist. It was never because you were there. It was because of what you said when you were there.
Right.
And well, that's a major difference.
Well, it is when you're looking at it the way you would in a court case. But for regular people out there, we're like, he couldn't have made those comments if he wasn't there. So there is.
But there were a whole bunch of people that agreed with the board that were also there, who were not domestic terrorists.
Well, it depends on what you do to piss them off.
Well, no, what I'm saying is the proponents of CRT at the board meeting in the parent department weren't domestic terrorists.
This report talks about how they gathered a lot of these information, and they had like a website you could go to. And
they had a snitch line. Are you kidding me?
So I laughed because I go, this sounds like Jim's complaints about the whole gun thing, right? Someone could complain about you about owning a gun or whatever. And it's like, how do you fight against a complaint that was made without, you don't know who made it. And then some of the people actually admitted that, oh yeah, I didn't have like full information, but I reported it anyway.
Well, and the thing is, in our country, the due process requirement under the law means you get to see your accusers and cross-examine them.
Oh, I'm so curious. So of you watching on YouTube, and if you're listening on the radio, go to YouTube, find this show, and I want you to type in the comments, what do you think about a snitch line? Do you think having a snitch line on things is a good idea? And if so, why? And if not, why? That'd be interesting.
And when you look at the description of these snitch line complaints, it's like somebody called the snitch line to complain about a lady that's in the neighborhood because she belongs to Mothers for Liberty and she owns a couple of guns.
Jim, I want you go ahead. Go ahead. I know you're going to do this. What is the saying about snitches?
I don't know.
Oh, come on, the old one. What did they used to say if you're a snitch? There was a saying.
You mean like in jail for the mafia?
What did they say?
I don't know.
Snitches get
stitches.
Yes.
Oh!
So I knew
that's not dinner table conversation in my house.
Well, so I don't know this whole snitch line.
I think it's crazy, and they were doing it locally with the COVID masking and the quarantining, they were saying, hey, you know, if your neighbor just came back from a trip and they're not quarantining, call the department. Remember?
I have to say that, you know, at a recent hearing on abortion, I know that half of the people that were there on our side weren't really happy at my little, because they only give you 2 minutes to talk, right? And just while I was sharing, it suddenly occurred to me, and I just said in the most pleasant of ways that we have really lost in this country the ability to sit and talk to someone who you disagree with and actually have a conversation without resorting to threats and terroristic threatening and all that
true.
kind of stuff.
And because I wanted to have the linchpin of this conversation about this interim staff report be voting. That's the linchpin. We got this investigation and the report not because the people that live in Hawaii elected Republicans to Congress, because we never do. We haven't since Charles Dejoux. But other places did. So that's why we got this report. It's really important. And I am going to come back to this all the time. You have to know, what your candidates think about liberty, about freedom, about justice, and you will know that based on their worldview. And you cannot wait until you get your ballot and it's due and pick somebody to vote for. We need to start right now in March, April of 2023, working on who we're going to vote for in November of 2024.
You know, and I'll push a little further on that too. If you hear of somebody, even as early as now, that want to run for office, and you know, if you think they're going to be a good candidate, then, you know, do what you can to support them. But if you think they're not going to be a good candidate, or you know something about them, you know, try to find a way to encourage somebody to run that is going to make a good statesman, because that's what we're looking for. Statesmen. We're not looking for someone who wants to see their name up in lights, or someone who just, you know, it's all about me. You know, I know that you know, we have worship songs that talk, it's all about you, Jesus, right? We're not singing the it's all about me songs, right? No, we're looking for statesmen and stateswomen that are really able to bring their faith out into the community. So that's what we're looking for. Jim is reminding you once again to stay plugged in. Make sure you like this video, share, subscribe, hit that notification button so you'll know every single time we upload a new video.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for telling me about that. I subscribed when we started, and I only get notices by text from you because I didn't say notify me.
And now you are notified by this.
I haven't yet, but I'm going to. But
yes.
People, if you don't know that, that's why you're not receiving notice of the new show.
Assignment at the end of the day, before we hang up, for those listening on the radio, mahalo for spending time with us today. For those watching on YouTube, I want you to share this video with 5 people.
Yeah.
5 people. And then, you know, email me and let me know how it goes. Maybe people disagree. Maybe they agree, but that's what we're here for. So we will see you all next week. Mahalo, everybody.